Hello everyone. In early March 2025, strong winds and heavy rains hit northern China. The natural disaster that occurred was not just an ordinary storm, but an event that would shake the world. As a massive landslide struck the Great Wall of China, part of this one of the world's wonders collapsed, revealing a cave that had remained hidden behind the ancient walls for centuries. In the void created by the falling boulders, there was something unexpected, a discovery no one could have imagined. The Great Wall of China, a symbol of the strength and pride of the nation, had for thousands of years been known only as a defense fortification from the past. However, this landslide unveiled a deeper mystery. After rescue teams and researchers were able to enter the revealed cave, they found something astonishing, a tomb that appeared to be very ancient, with a gravestone engraved with Arabic writing. A writing that many around them could not understand. News of the discovery quickly spread. The Chinese government dispatched expert teams to verify the find. They soon realized that what had been uncovered was not just an ordinary tomb. Once the gravestone was cleaned of layers of dirt and stones, it became clear that the inscription listed the name Zulkifli, a name that was very familiar among Muslims, but had never been heard of in Chinese history. A sensation immediately ensued. Archaeologists, historians, and even scholars from around the world rushed to the site, trying to uncover the meaning behind this seemingly historic discovery. A leading researcher from the Arab world, who had long studied the historical connections between Islam and Asia, confidently stated that this was the tomb of Prophet Zulkifli, a prophet known in the Quran, but whose burial site had never been definitively known. Some immediately suggested that the Chinese government announced the discovery to the world. However, on the other hand, there were concerns about the public reaction, especially in a country where the majority of the population practices Buddhism and Taoism. With all considerations in mind, the Chinese government decided to conduct further investigations, while also keeping the news from causing unnecessary alarm among the public. However, nothing could stop the wave of interest coming from abroad. Within days, news of the discovery became the focus of international attention. Global media began reporting on the extraordinary event, while in China, many curious people began to seek more information about who Prophet Zulkifli truly was. The name, which was previously unfamiliar, now started to be discussed widely on the streets of Beijing, Shanghai, and even small towns across the country. Some began to ask, what is the meaning of this discovery? Why has the tomb of a prophet suddenly appeared at the Great Wall of China? Answers to these questions were still unclear, but one thing was certain: this discovery would shake not only the history of China but also the history of the world. Following the astonishing discovery, the world of archaeology and Islamic history was shaken. The Chinese government quickly ordered a team of scientists and experts to investigate the newly uncovered tomb. Archaeologists from various countries, including several from the Middle East, Europe, and Asia, were called upon to help uncover this mystery. One of them, Professor Li Wei, a prominent archaeologist in China, stated that this discovery was not just about a tomb, but about a lost history that was now beginning to emerge. As the scientific team dug deeper into the cave, they discovered that the tomb was buried beneath a layer of soil that seemed to have been buried for thousands of years. The cave itself, though well protected from external damage, showed signs of extreme age. Inside the cave, along with the tomb, several artifacts made of stone and metal were found, which seemed to date back to very ancient times. These artifacts also bore unusual symbols, with a combination of ancient Chinese characters and Arabic letters. However, the most surprising element was the tomb itself. This was no ordinary tomb. The gravestone, beautifully engraved, displayed a clear name, Zulkifli, with fine and perfect calligraphy. The name was written not only in Arabic, but also in ancient Chinese script, referring to someone highly respected in Islamic tradition, Prophet Zulkifli. Professor Li and his team worked tirelessly to further verify the origin of the tomb. They analyzed the materials from the tomb using modern technology, including carbon dating to determine its age. The results showed that the tomb had been in existence for over 1,500 years, a period that aligns perfectly with the lifetime of Prophet Zulkifli as mentioned in the Quran. Meanwhile, Islamic scholars who came to the site began conducting further research to confirm the connection between the tomb and Prophet Zulkifli in Islamic teachings. Ustaz Muhammad al-Farisi, a scholar from Saudi Arabia, was among the first to express his belief that the tomb belonged to Prophet Zulkifli. "The story of Prophet Zulkifli in the Quran is known for his patience in facing the trials of life," said al-Farisi. "This discovery is a miracle that shows that Islamic history is far more widespread and transcends various parts of the world." The news of the discovery continued to evolve. Not only did it attract the attention of Muslims worldwide, but it also sparked curiosity among the Chinese population. Many Chinese citizens, who had previously never heard of Prophet Zulkifli, began to take an interest in learning more about this figure and Islamic teachings. Social media was filled with discussions about the tomb, and many videos and articles explaining who Prophet Zulkifli was and why the discovery of his tomb was so important. For some, the discovery of the tomb was a miracle that could not be explained by ordinary logic. For others, it was a sign that the world is larger and more diverse than they had imagined, and that the history of the world's religions has long been interconnected, though rarely known to many. Despite being surprised by the developments, the Chinese government decided to open broader access for scientists and visitors to come and see the discovery for themselves. The government even began building facilities around the tomb site to facilitate further research, though still under strict supervision. They realized that this discovery held great potential in enhancing international understanding of China's history and culture, while being careful not to spark religious tensions within the country. However, behind all the excitement, one thing was clear: the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb at the Great Wall of China not only changed the world's understanding of history but also opened the door to major questions about the relationships between religion and culture in the modern world. Over time, scholars and Muslims around the world became increasingly convinced that this discovery was a message, a sign from Allah connecting the past and the present, reminding humanity that history is more than what meets the eye. In their hearts, many believed that this was the beginning of something much bigger, a movement that would change not only China but the world as a whole. As the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb continued to make headlines, China found itself caught in an unexpected whirlwind of change. A country long known for its Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian cultural heritage now faced the reality that its religious history, which had seemed almost entirely disconnected from Islam, was suddenly confronted with a surprising new reality: the discovery of the tomb of an Islamic prophet at the heart of their nation. Since the discovery was first announced, many in China were shocked and confused. Some people felt anxious, wondering how society would react to the fact that a tomb was connected to a religion unfamiliar to many of its citizens. On the other hand, there were also groups who felt curious and excited to learn more about Islam and the life of Prophet Zulkifli. Several religious figures in China, particularly those from Buddhist and Taoist backgrounds, voiced their concerns about this discovery. They worried that if too many people were influenced by this find, it could trigger significant changes in the country's social and religious structure. Some even began to criticize the involvement of international Muslim scholars in the investigation of the tomb, fearing it could sway traditional Chinese beliefs. However, despite the uncertainty and tension in some circles, the general sentiment among the public was one of intense curiosity. A large number of Chinese citizens, especially in major cities like Beijing and Shanghai, began seeking more information about Prophet Zulkifli and Islam. Many were surprised to learn that a religion originating far from their land could have such deep connections to their own history. On social media, platforms like Weibo and WeChat were filled with discussions about the discovery. Videos explaining who Prophet Zulkifli was, shared by influencers and scholars, started to gain widespread attention. Many Chinese citizens, who had never heard of Prophet Zulkifli before, now wanted to learn more about this figure known for his patience and faith in facing life's great trials. In Beijing, an open discussion about the discovery was held at one of the cultural centers. A renowned Chinese history professor, Li Ming, gave a lecture on the relationship between China's history and the world's religions. "This discovery opens a window for us to see a broader world," said Professor Li. "If we are fixated on just one historical perspective, we lose the chance to understand the various narratives that shape our civilization." The lecture was met with enthusiasm, and discussions about world religions became increasingly popular among Chinese citizens. At the same time, many young people felt inspired by this discovery. They began exploring Islam through various sources they found online, from articles to videos, and even joined discussion groups to talk about religion and spirituality. At some major universities, Muslim student groups began to grow, with many members being Chinese citizens who had recently embraced Islam after hearing about Prophet Zulkifli's tomb. However, there were also those who felt confused by the phenomenon. For many people raised in Buddhist and Taoist traditions, the discovery of the tomb seemed to shake the foundation of their beliefs. Some felt that there was something greater at play beyond just history. "Maybe this isn't a coincidence," said Zhong Wei, a Beijing resident active in religious discussions. "Maybe this is God's way of reminding us that the world is bigger than what we have always believed." As more scholars and religious leaders from outside China came to give lectures and explain about Prophet Zulkifli and Islam, an increasing number of Chinese citizens began to take an interest in learning about this religion. Those who had previously known little about Islam now became more open to listening to talks about Islamic teachings, particularly about the values of peace, patience, and tolerance associated with Prophet Zulkifli. However, the discovery was not only touching the spiritual side of society. Its impact was also felt in the social and political sectors. Some political figures in China began to worry about the rising interest in Islam, fearing it could lead to tensions between various religious groups in the country. The Chinese government, though opening more opportunities for further research, remained cautious about the social impact that the growing phenomenon of conversions might have. The Chinese government then issued an official statement declaring that the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb was part of their historical heritage and should be respected, but also reminded the public to maintain social and religious harmony. They emphasized that existing secular policies should still be followed, though they allowed more freedom for Muslims to develop their religious practices. Meanwhile, this discovery began opening new opportunities for international diplomacy, especially between China and Muslim-majority countries. Diplomatic meetings between Chinese officials and Arab countries began to take place, discussing possibilities for further collaboration in the fields of culture, education, and religion. Many saw this discovery as a chance to strengthen China's relationship with the Islamic world, a relationship that had been somewhat underdeveloped in China's international relations. The discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb at the Great Wall of China began to have a profound impact on society and the world. What began as an unexpected natural disaster had now become a pivotal moment in China's history, a moment that reminded the world that history is never separate, and that great events can emerge from the most unlikely places. Of course, this is just the beginning. The allure of this discovery had only begun to touch the surface, and quickly, big questions about what would come next began to emerge in the minds of many people. Months after the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb at the Great Wall of China became a hot topic, an unexpected phenomenon began to unfold. What started as mere curiosity about history and culture quickly transformed into a spiritual wave that brought significant changes to the religious landscape of China. Within a short period, around 30 million Chinese citizens, previously unaffiliated with any religion or following traditional beliefs, embraced Islam. At first, the conversions were subtle. Some individuals, inspired by this extraordinary discovery, began delving deeper into Islam. They read books about Prophet Zulkifli, listened to lectures from scholars, and began to experience the peace that came from Islamic teachings. For them, the tomb's discovery wasn't just an archaeological event, it was a spiritual calling. They felt as though Allah had guided them to learn more about this religion. As time passed, however, the wave of conversions grew broader. In major cities, especially Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Lebanon, mosques that were once empty began to see a surge in visitors. Not just Muslims, but many Chinese people who had recently decided to embrace Islam filled the mosques. They came to learn about prayer, to study the Quran, and to find the peace they had long sought. Ali, a young man from Shanghai who had recently converted to Islam, shared that he felt as if he had found the missing answer in his life after hearing about Prophet Zulkifli. "I feel like my life's journey has finally found its right direction. I know I don't know much yet, but I feel more at peace since I embraced Islam," he said confidently. In a large mosque in Beijing, which had previously been attended by only about 100 worshippers, the mosque became packed with thousands of people, most of them new converts. The mosque's imams, who once gave lectures to small congregations, were now busy guiding these new groups. They offered courses on the basics of Islam, from how to perform ablution to the proper recitations for prayers. The mosque grew busier by the day and quickly became a hub for learning. Several large families in China, previously tied to Buddhist or Taoist traditions, began to notice shifts in their lives. They watched family members, who had once been indifferent to religion or even skeptical of spirituality, now move to seek deeper meaning in their lives through Islam. Many of them began reciting the Shahada, though some did so with uncertainty and doubt. Not everyone embraced these changes with open arms, however. Some conservative and nationalist groups in China began to criticize the rising number of conversions. They worried that Islam could affect China's culture and traditional values. Some even argued that the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb was part of a foreign effort to spread influence in China. "We must protect our cultural heritage and not let foreign religions change our national identity," said some community leaders in various public gatherings. However, the Chinese government's response was relatively moderate. Although cautious about the wave of conversions, the government did not take harsh measures. Instead, they allowed Muslims to practice their faith more openly, though still within the boundaries of the country's secular policies. The Chinese government issued guidelines for mosque construction and religious activities, but in general, they provided space for Islam to grow, emphasizing social stability and religious harmony. With this great change, new challenges began to emerge. In some regions, social tension surfaced between more conservative groups and those who had recently converted to Islam. Some large families, with newly converted members, found themselves divided. While most families supported their members' decisions, some felt uncomfortable with the choice. This created debates within households and small communities, although the majority of society still strove to maintain peace and understanding. The rise of Islam in China also had an impact on the education sector. Universities and educational institutions began offering programs related to Islamic studies, Arabic language, and the history of the Muslim world. Many young students became interested in learning more about Islam, seeing the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb as a trigger that introduced them to a broader worldview. Abroad, reactions to this development were mixed. Muslim-majority countries, especially in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, welcomed the mass conversions. Governments and religious leaders from these countries issued statements supporting the conversion of Chinese citizens to Islam. "This is the result of a long and blessed spiritual journey," said a prominent scholar from Saudi Arabia in an interview. "We welcome our new brothers and sisters into Islam with love and a spirit of brotherhood." This wave of conversions was not just about numbers. It was a spiritual revolution that was changing the face of Chinese society. What had begun as a historical discovery had now turned into a spiritual journey, bringing thousands of people toward a belief system that they felt provided peace and a deeper understanding of life. Yet, amidst this miracle, many still questioned how China's society would be affected by this change, and how the country would respond to the ever-growing wave of conversions. One thing was certain, however: the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb at the Great Wall of China had opened a new chapter in the spiritual history of the world. It was a chapter that not only marked a transformation in religion in China, but also brought humanity closer in terms of interfaith understanding and shared human values. After the extraordinary wave of conversions, China found itself at a crossroads. A society that had previously been relatively homogeneous in terms of religion was now facing a more complex challenge. The discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb had sparked not only a wave of conversions but also inevitable social tensions. As the number of Muslims in the country increased, a critical question arose: could China maintain social and cultural harmony, or would these differences exacerbate tensions between religious groups? Months after the discovery, the Chinese government began to feel the impact of the changes. On one hand, they saw increased interfaith harmony in many places. Many new Muslims were welcomed even by non-Muslim groups who were more tolerant. But on the other hand, there was also a growing sense of concern among those who felt that their long-standing traditions, which had been rooted for thousands of years, were threatened by the influx of foreign religions. In Beijing, religious leaders from various backgrounds began gathering to find ways to maintain social stability. In a large meeting held at a cultural center, Buddhist, Taoist, and Muslim leaders came together to discuss measures that could be taken to preserve peace. One Buddhist monk, Xu Wei, spoke calmly: "We must keep China as a land that embraces diversity. We cannot close our eyes to the fact that the world is changing, and we must learn to live together despite our differences." However, not everyone agreed with this viewpoint. Some more conservative nationalist groups felt that the mass conversions could threaten China's cultural identity. China is a country with strong traditions, and we cannot let foreign religions infiltrate our culture, said one conservative figure in a public forum. This is an important issue that could erode values we've maintained for centuries. The tensions escalated when several large mosques in major cities began attracting massive attention. The congregations were no longer composed only of local Muslims, but also people from abroad who were curious about this unique phenomenon. The mosques became centers of learning, even symbols of the spread of Islam in China. But not everyone viewed this development positively. In rural areas, many families began to feel divided over the decision of some of their members to embrace Islam. In more conservative villages, concerns about religious and cultural identity began to surface. When a large family in a rural area announced that their child had recently converted to Islam, some family members felt confused and disappointed. There was a feeling that the old traditions, which had been followed for centuries, would be undermined by this new faith. In response, the Chinese government began taking a more cautious approach. They issued new policies to regulate religious practices in public spaces, ensuring that all religions could grow without disrupting social stability. The mosques, which had been growing rapidly in some major cities, were now subject to stricter regulations, ensuring that religious activities followed the guidelines established by the government. The government also ramped up efforts to educate the public about the importance of living together in diversity, facilitating interfaith dialogues at various levels. In this atmosphere of tension, a Chinese Muslim figure, Hassan Li, a member of the Hui ethnic group, began emerging as a moderating voice. Hassan, a successful businessman who had turned to religion, decided to become a bridge between two worlds. He organized meetings between religious groups and local communities, emphasizing tolerance and peace. "I know that this change comes with challenges, but we can face them if we understand one another," said Hassan in a lecture attended by thousands of people. "We must believe that behind every difference, we share the same goal: peace, happiness, and prosperity for all." Hassan and other religious leaders focused on the importance of moderate religious education, one that not only taught about their own beliefs but also about respecting and understanding the teachings of other religions. In many newly built mosques, inclusive religious education programs were introduced. On the other hand, public schools in China also began incorporating lessons on the history of world religions, aiming to teach the younger generation about the importance of tolerance and peaceful coexistence. While there were still many challenges to face, such as how to unify a society divided by religious differences, the Chinese government, alongside religious leaders, worked to find a middle ground. Religious diversity in China was no longer seen as something to avoid, but as a new reality that had to be addressed with wisdom and patience. Ultimately, the discovery of Prophet Zulkifli's tomb at the Great Wall of China did not only change the world's perception of Chinese history, but also transformed the social and religious life of the country. The wave of mass conversions demonstrated that, despite differences in religion and culture, the desire for peace and a deeper understanding of life was universal. Over time, China began to learn how to embrace the diversity within its society. Although challenges remained, the future appeared to hold more opportunities for China to become an example of interfaith harmony, where differences were appreciated and accepted as part of the cultural richness that enhanced communal life. What began as a landslide of rocks had now sparked a spiritual and social revolution that would leave a lasting mark on history.